Hi folks, I'm Mike, and I hope you're well. Freezing tracks in the new Cakewalk Sonar is the same as freezing tracks in Cakewalk by Bandlab. It's incredibly useful if you want to free up system resources, especially if you're getting pops, clicks or dropouts during playback and recording. But I bet there's a few things that even you old timers don't know about. Let's find out, starting off with the basics. In this project, I've got two different types of tracks which can be frozen. At the top here in green, I have a virtual instrument track. Now, if I open up that virtual instrument, you'll see I'm using ModArt's Pianotech 8 Pro to generate a piano sound in real time. Now, because these types of plugins are generating sound in real time, they can be quite CPU intensive. So they're great candidates for freezing. Now, as well as using this plugin to generate the sound, I also have an effects plugin inserted in the effects rack here, and you can see that I'm using Arturia's Rev Intensity here. So that is also using valuable CPU resources. The track below this in blue is a regular audio track. You can see its waveform over to the right here. Now, these use a lot less in terms of CPU resources because it's just playing an actual recording. However, we do tend to use a lot of effects on these, and you can see I've got 3 inserted here, and they're all using valuable CPU resources. So these are also useful to freeze at times. So how do we freeze them? Regardless of what type of track we're freezing, we always do it the same way. Just go to the track and click on that little kind of snow icon there. Once you click on that, you can monitor progress at the top of the screen here. Now, sometimes it takes a little while, so while it's doing its thing, let's talk about what it's doing. Well, in the case of this track, it's taking that virtual piano, which was generating audio in real time, and creating a permanent audio recording. You can see the waveform for this has appeared here. So why is this a big advantage? Well, it means every time we hit play now, the virtual instrument no longer has to generate that sound in real time and use CPU resources. Instead, it can just play this audio recording. But the really massive advantage with freezing over simply mixing the track down or bouncing it to another track is we can always unfreeze. We do that by clicking on the same icon again. Now, I'm not going to do it now, but the advantage of unfreezing is we can go to the underlying performance, the notes being played by the piano, and we can change them or re-record it. We can also make changes to the effects we had applied. Now, why do I mention effects? Well, you can see that that reverb effect that I had applied to the piano is now kind of dimmed out. That indicates that the effect has been baked into that audio recording. So again, when we hit play, the CPU no longer has to be used to generate that reverb effect. Now, we can also do the same thing with audio recordings. If I go to my audio recording and click on the freeze button, it's going to do the same thing, except it's a bit quicker normally because it doesn't have to actually create the initial audio. It just has to bake in the effects. And you can see it's done that with the 3 effects there. You'll also note that initially this was several audio clips, but it's turned it into one big clip. Now, we can change the behavior of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what can we actually do with this audio? Well, we can do the same things with this audio that we can do with regular audio. So for example, I could go in and split this audio here. I could make changes to the endpoints. I could do fades. I can even move it around to a different position. And we can also move it to another track if we want. So I'm just going to scroll up a little here. I'm going to hold Shift and Control on my keyboard and just drag this clip up. And that's made a duplicate of this audio on a completely different track. This can be useful if you really want to preserve this audio for some reason and have it there if you unfreeze. Okay, so what do we need to take into consideration though if we make changes to this audio? Well, we have to remember that if we go ahead and unfreeze this track, the changes we've made to this audio won't be reflected. In other words, I've moved this piano part over to the right, so it's starting a lot later. But if I unfreeze the track, then that piano part has gone back to where it initially was. So before you go wild with making changes to that audio, it's worth taking that into consideration. Now, another thing to note once our track is frozen, and we'll look at our blue track here, is we can actually click on the effects and open them up. So I could open this this effect here, this LA2A, and if I make changes here to the knobs, you can see it's still working, but it isn't actually going to make a change to the sound until we unfreeze. So it's really worth keeping that in mind. When we unfreeze, whatever changes I had made will now be applied to the sound. Now this is sort of important as well when we're talking about quick freezing. So the piano in my recording was frozen with a mild amount of reverb on it. Have a quick listen. Now, as discussed earlier, I can actually still open my reverb plugin, so I'll do that and just bring it to the middle here. But if I make changes, like say to the size control here, it's not actually sort of making those changes on the sound. Have a listen. Now, if I wanted to experiment really quickly with a huge reverb sound, what I can do is do a quick unfreeze. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can either right click on the freeze icon and go to quick unfreeze, or you can hold shift and click on the freeze icon, which is what I'm going to do now. Now we get our original performance back and the reverb is also unfrozen. Have a listen now that that huge size setting is being applied. And maybe I'll think to myself, you know what, I don't like that after all. Well, I can just click on the freeze icon again and it'll go back to the old setting. You notice how quickly it was frozen there? Didn't take the time that it took before. So have a listen now. And that happened because we did a quick unfreeze. Now, if we did want to apply that setting, what we need to do is just do a normal unfreeze. I'll do that now, yeah, and then we need to actually freeze it again. So we'll do that, and of course it takes a while to generate that with that, you know, new setting on the reverb. Now there's some important freeze options you should know about, and the first one is whether we should include effects or not. To change this, we go to any of the freeze buttons, we right click and go down to freeze options, and that brings up the options dialog box. Now we can go down to this checkbox here, which is track effects, uncheck it and click OK. Now the next time we freeze anything, it won't actually include the effects. So you can see those effects have not been dimmed. We can go in, we can make changes to those effects, and we'll hear the change in the sound right away. Now you'll notice again that it's this one big audio track which has been made out of the several clips that we had here earlier. So let's change that. We'll unfreeze it first so we get back to our original clips, then we'll right click, go to freeze options, and then this time we'll uncheck single bounce per track. So I'll uncheck that and click on OK. Now when I go ahead and freeze this track, you'll see it's no longer one long audio track, but it doesn't quite reflect the original clips that were there. Now I'm not sure whether this is a bug or whether it's on purpose, because these clips were really close together. They did kind of overlap each other. I have noticed if I uncheck this and have a clip which is a fair distance away from the other clips and then do a freeze with this setting, then I do in fact end up with separate clips. So let me know in the comments down below if you know if this is a bug or not, but that can be quite a useful setting. Now some of the other options that we have when freezing things, if we open up options again, you'll see that we have this option to remove silence. So this means that it will make sure that it doesn't include silence in any new clips that are made. So I'll click that on. There are some settings here that act a bit like a gate, you know, some tolerances and things that you can set for that. And I'm going to click on OK. I'll just pop that one back kind of where it was, and let's drag out the end of it so we have a whole bunch of silence, and then let's freeze this track and see what happens. And you can see that according to the gate settings, it didn't actually generate anything where that silence was. And finally, with another couple of things, again, we'll right click on one of the freeze buttons, bring up the dialog box. You'll notice that there's also this setting here, which is to do with the freeze tail duration. You set a number of seconds. So this is really important to set this when you've got something like, say, a huge reverb plugin or a delay plugin on a clip, and it's going to go on sort of beyond the length of the clip. Okay, so you want to make sure you set that so it doesn't get cut short. And finally, we also have this setting at the top where we can actually render in real time if we want to. So it's going to, you know, play the playhead if we actually go and freeze the track, and we can choose with this audible bounce or not whether we can hear that process in action or not. Now, there's a few things you can do to make sure that this new Cakewalk channel is sustainable. First of all, leave a comment down below. Just say hi or ask me a question about freezing, or let me know what other videos you'd like me to make for the new versions of Cakewalk or even the old versions of Cakewalk. The other things that you can do is make sure that you do like this video, and if you're not already, subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.